You guys, our video stopped recording. I'm so sorry. Let's get back to it. Chapter 17. Those filing cabinets have drawers and handles and locks and make a solid, echoey crabang sound when they're closed. Ours is a lot quieter. It's as soft and comfortable and quiet as a couch. That's because it is our couch. Mother lifted the middle cushion and stuck Mrs. Cardsdale's letter on top of some other papers. She patted the cushion back into place. Now, what's that delicious smell, Deza? Just supper, I smiled and headed to the kitchen, but my mind was under the couch cushion with that letter. After we ate and Mother went over to see Mrs. Henderson, I went in the filing cabinet, got the letter, and took it to Jimmy. Great. We can go find Father now. Oops. Not great, Jimmy. We can't trust that woman. What do you mean, sis? We've got to open this letter. No problem. Put the kettle on. I knew he'd be able to get into the envelope without anyone knowing. He'd open every sealed report card and letter from the teachers he'd ever gotten before he gave them to Mother and Father. After the kettle boiled, Jimmy took it off the stove. The most important thing is don't get it too wet. Most folks mess up by soaking the glue too much. That way the envelope gets bumpy and everyone knows it's been opened before. Jimmy is always very generous, even with his lessons on how to be a criminal. He held the envelope over the kettle's neck and slowly pulled up the flap. You have to take your time with everything, not just steaming open letters. Be patient and take your time. Remember what Pa always says. All things come to the person who waits. I didn't correct Jimmy because in every movie I'd ever seen, in every book I'd ever read, if one of the criminals criticizes what their partners do or say, it always ends up with a person in prison. What Father really says, though, is all things come to the person who waits if that person works like mad while they're waiting. Jimmy got the last part of the flap from the envelope, and it was absolutely flat. Wow, Jimmy, that's great. Hold on, we ain't all the way done yet. This is just as important. He blew along the envelope's flap. This stops the glue from crumbling up. All set. I pulled the letter out. It was on 3 pages of fancy writing paper. My stomach was folding, not because I knew this was wrong, but because I was afraid of what the letter might say. While Jimmy put the kettle away, I quickly read through what the woman had written. I got happy and mad at the same time. Happy that my gut feeling was right, and mad at what this horrible woman had written. All right, Deza, what does it say? I read parts of the letter to Jimmy. Dear Marilyn, I'm certain you've heard about the tragic situation here in Gary. Charles has been ordered to take an unheard of 25% cut in his salary. He's a man of integrity and refuses to accept this. We have made the heartbreaking decision to close Grace Hall and travel to the continent for the next 3 years, or until such time as this country gets back to normal. As you can imagine, this has placed a tremendous stress and burden on me as I arrange for lodgings with kind and generous friends in 6 countries. I'm left to wander at God's mercy. Thus far, I have been able to keep a strong and cheerful face for the sake of Charles and the children. Speaking of which, how are Ernest and your young ones? Please forgive me for waiting so long into this correspondence to inquire after their well-being. I'm certain you can understand the unimaginable stress under which I operate daily. Has this horrible depression devastated your family as much as it has devastated ours? Remember, Charles says it shan't be long before this great country comes to its senses, throws off that filthy communist Roosevelt, and is returned to its rightful owners. I shall write from Burton-on-Trent, where we will be staying with Lady Chigwell for the next 6 months. Who could have dreamed that it would come to all of this? Sincerely, Millie. In parentheses, Mrs. Charles Cardsdale. Postscript, so that's like P.S. The colored gal bearing this letter has been in our employ for the past 12 years. She missed an entire year for some cause or another. She is a competent worker, so I relented to rehire her. I've always believed 'tis better to stay with the devil you know. I skipped reading the next lines to Jimmy. In that time, she has also missed 4 or 5 days to tend to a sickly boy who has not grown up properly. I'm sure it's nothing more than the terrible food those people enjoy so much. This part I read aloud to Jimmy. I've never been able to catch her stealing. If your experience has been anything like mine, you know them as well as I. I've found that one is a carbon copy of the next. Hire her at your own peril. Well, was that a nice letter? My hands were trembling. Jimmy was looking down and shaking his head. Man, Ma's gonna be mad. No, she won't. We can't let her see this. I wish I could get some of this woman's writing paper. I know I can copy this penmanship in a flash. You know, I'm going to the car deals with Ma for the rest of this week. I'm getting a dime a day to help them close their house up. Jimmy, I don't know. You hit the nail on the head, sis. You don't know. And you don't know, and you don't want to know. Let Jesse rob this train. Give me some skin and leave the rest up to me. I slapped Jimmy's palm and had never felt like such a big crook in all my life. And doggone it all, the second brain was taking over because I really liked this feeling. Mother and Jimmy came home together the next day, and as soon as he saw me, Jimmy made his eyebrow go up and down. Over and over and over, I followed him into his room. He smiled. Ta-da! He opened a paper sack and pulled out 10 sheets of the beautiful paper and 2 envelopes. It wasn't until that second that I saw that Jimmy stole this stuff for nothing. We didn't have any ink or good pen, so I could copy this woman's writing. Jimmy read my mind. Ta-da! He reached into the bag, and this time he was holding a gorgeous pen and an inkwell. What'd I say? You gotta let the Jesse rob this train. I know you are gonna need the ink, too. I'll take anything you don't use back tomorrow. Now it's your turn. After I'd practiced on some of my foolscap, I only messed up 1 sheet of the pretty paper when I wrote the new letter. I kept in mind what Mrs. Needham said about good writing being short and to the point. Mrs. Carsdale was far too verbose. I was kind of upset that I was making this woman look good by improving her writing. I got my thesaurus and dictionary, and after about an hour I came up with this. Dear Marilyn, the woman bearing this letter has asked for a recommending letter, and my heart is filled with joy to give her one. She is kind and loving and helpful in every way. She has worked for us for the past 12 years, and we wish she would stay for us forever. But she is moving to Flint to be with her husband, who is also kind and loving. She is trying to keep her delightful family together. If you give her a job, she will work as hard for you as she did for us. She never lies or steals, because that is against everything she's taught her children. One of them is charming, kind, and a loving boy. He sings like an angel. The other one is a girl who is very humble. Don't answer this missive. I shall write from Burton-on-Trent, which is geologically located in England, where we will be the guests of Lady Chigwell for a very long time. Sincerely, Millie. In parentheses, Mrs. Charles Carsdale. Postscript. P.S. God bless President Roosevelt, America, and all the world. A little different than the actual letter she wrote. I wonder if her friend is going to think something is suspicious. Jimmy, he came upstairs into my room. He read the letter. He gave me a thumbs up sign and said, put it back in the filing cabinet, Deza, and let's get ready to say goodbye to old Gary. Jimmy's words brought all the sadness back out of me. It was true, I was going to have to leave my home. Just when it seemed my luck was turning. I'd have to say goodbye to Mrs. Needham, and worst of all, I'd have to say goodbye to Clarice. But the chance of finding Father and bringing him back home was worth even this. Chapter 17. All right. Rosie, going to help me with the questions? All right. Question 1. How long has Father been gone? Has he been gone for 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or 2 weeks? How is Jimmy helping the family? Is he cleaning the house, cooking dinner nightly, working for Dr. Bracey, or stealing food? Number 3, why does Mama explain that they have to move to Flint? Is it because she's going to lose her job because the Cardsdales are moving to Europe? She thinks Father is not doing well. She's worried about the bugs in their oatmeal. She can't find work. Number 4 is a true or false question. So circle either true or false. Deza and Jimmy were excited to leave Gary and start over. Is that true or false? Number 5, what did Deza do every day after her mother and Jimmy left? Does she go to Mrs. Needham's house? Does she stay in her parents' bed? Does she read every book she owns? Or does she sit in the library with Clarice? Number 6, what was Mother hiding behind her back? Was it a letter from Father, a loaf of bread, a letter from Mrs. Cardsdale giving Mama a recommendation for a job, or a new book for Deza? Number 7, where was their filing cabinet? And I'm reading this question, and it's interesting because in this question they use the wrong form of there. So just ignore that. Where was there? There is not the correct kind of there. Filing cabinet. Was it in Mama's bedroom, in the linen closet, under Deza's bed, or in the couch? 3 more questions, 1 multiple choice and 2 extended response. Number 8, why does Deza need to know what the letter from Mrs. Cardsdale says? Is it because she doesn't trust her? The names are spelled wrong. She wants to change it, or she thinks it's a blank letter. Careful with that one. 2 good options, but one is really the reason why that it says specifically in the book. Number 9, was the letter a recommendation for Mama? What does this letter explain about Mrs. Cardsdale? So first, you need to answer, was it a recommendation? So does Mrs. Cardsdale recommend that Mama be hired by her friend? And then the second question you have to answer there is, what does this letter say about Mrs. Cardsdale? Remember, Mrs. Cardsdale is Mama's current employer. So what does it say about her? Maybe her character, maybe something that we learn about her by reading her letter. Make sure you have capitals, you have an organized thought, you have punctuation, and your spelling is accurate. Number 10, why did Jimmy steal paper and a pen from the Cardsdale family? Was this a good idea? Explain your answer. So this is also a two-parter. Why does he steal the paper and pen from the Cardsdale family? So what is his and Deza's plan to use those items for? And then also, so this is an opinion, do you think this was a good idea? Do you think they'll get away with it, or do you think they'll get caught? If they get caught, what's going to happen? If they don't get caught, what's going to happen? Explain why you think it's a good idea or not. Okay? So that is chapter 17. I'm sorry that it got recorded in 2 parts again. The computer was starting to shut off, so I went to move the mouse to get it to turn back on, and it stopped recording because it turned off. So I wasn't quick enough. I was too into the chapter. I apologize. But anyway, I will see you tomorrow morning at our Zoom meeting at 11 a.m. And I hope you enjoyed today's science activity. Hope you enjoyed today's chapter. We'll go over the answers tomorrow and hopefully have a Crafty Friday activity if the rain lets up. Have a good night. Love ya.